It's Recovery This Week. I'm Damon Frank.
And I'm Shauna McKenna Vick, and I'm coming to you today, Damon from Austin, Texas.
Okay, Shauna, first of all, you're making me sound like my life is boring. I'm always coming to you from Hollywood, California, Los Angeles. You're in Ireland. You're in you're now in Austin. You're everywhere that an interventionist wants to be. What's the deal with this?
Well, as an interventionist, when I make recommendations to families, I like to give them a few options of treatment centers when we've decided that the client is going to treatment. And so these treatment centers invite us down for professionals days where we can really peel back the covers and see what's going on at these treatment centers so we can feel confident that our clients are being well taken care of. And I'm visiting the Foundation Stone family of programs. They have two programs here, Amend Wellness and the Legacy. And you know what? Why don't we save it for next week once I've
Yeah.
been able to visit? But Marcia Stone has three programs, two here in Texas and one for women called the Pearl in Pensacola, Florida. And I'd love to actually maybe next week we just talk about different places that I've been and this experience and why I do what I do.
I love that. Very interesting, this thing about men's treatment. In Recovery This Week, we go over kind of what's going on. And I actually we just dropped an episode this week with Josh Swanson from Anonymous, who's a fellow Substacker, talking about men's issues and, things that he's doing regarding goodbye letters. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely do that. Well,
And that's
I'm
on
so glad.
Substack,
It's
Damon. You
it's
said
yeah, it's
you
on Recovered Life TV, so
okay,
everybody can
I'll check
check
it
it
out.
out there.
I haven't had
So
a chance.
one of the things I would want to talk with you about, and I'm so glad that we're doing this episode now. It seems that like I reached out to you when you were traveling, getting on a plane. I was like, man, it seems like every day here we have more, drug and alcohol celebrity news that's
Mm-hmm.
breaking and kind of ripped from the headline, Shauna. It's like everybody's talking about, two things, Justin Timberlake and
Mm-hmm.
still Matthew Perry. And so I want to kind of talk about those because it's very interesting. One of the first things that I find kind of, it's not funny, but it's kind of hilarious in its own way, is all of this attention on this Timberlake DUI. It is like literally the queen coming to town. Everybody's talking about this. The world seems like it's falling apart, and we're talking about Justin Timberlake's DUI. But
Right.
it is kind of a big deal, especially if you're in recovery. We look at things like that. Thoughts? I mean, what's your thought on this?
Oh my gosh, I have tremendous compassion for these stars. It's hard enough getting sober and relapsing and getting sober again. Like for me, I am not famous. I am not, if I haven't gotten a DUI, but if I got a DUI, I'd have a mugshot. It might be on mugshots.com, but people don't go and search for my name. It's not like that. But for these stars who struggle with addiction, who get into these pickles, well, they're bigger than, pickles. They get it splashed all over the headlines. And I think that if it were me, I would feel even more shame. And then, they're forced into getting help. They have to, save face. So they say, I'm going to treatment or whatever, and they might not be ready to go to treatment. So there's a lot we could unpack around this. But I found it curious because I thought, he recently had some good news. Isn't his wife pregnant?
I,
And so, that's
yeah,
exciting, right? That's
yeah.
exciting and good news. So even when your life is going well, you can have struggles with substances.
Well, we don't know, look, I'm just going to say this up front. Shauna and I personally in the Recovered Life show, and in Recover This Week, we don't know, what his status is, if he's in recovery, if he's not in
Oh yeah, no,
recovery.
no, no. I'm
Yeah.
I'm just assuming someone who gets a DUI who has multiple drugs in their
Yes.
system that's a struggle.
but people have but people have mentioned this a lot, and there's been a lot of things written about it, and there's been comments from him about it. And I think the thing that I find interesting is, the idea of driving under the influence has changed so much since the 80s. When I first learned to drive, it was in the 80s, to date myself, right? So a little Gen Xer here. And when when we learned to drive, it was starting to become a big deal, right? It
Hmm.
was not as big of a deal.
No.
People would get a DUI, they would get literally a ticket, the whole depending on where you lived and the whole thing. And now it's really become a bigger thing. I think that's a good thing because of all the, devastation that drunk drivers have caused and,
Yeah.
not look, if you're like me and you've been sober for a long time and you also drank, especially through your 20s and teens, you know, uh, the likelihood of getting a DUI is pretty high, especially if you don't have great judgment skills the younger you are. Now, Justin's 43, so I think we could
And he
throw
could
that
probably
out.
get a driver, but that's, I'm
Yeah.
placing a lot of judgment on him. Whatever happened, he got in the car, he was under the influence, and he got a consequence. And then it was splashed all over the papers. That
Do
is,
you And not talking just about Justin Timberlake, I think one of the things that's very interesting is a lot of people will end up getting into recovery. And I know a lot of men, especially who have gotten DUIs, that is their entry point
mhm,
into recovery, right? And I think one of the benefits of celebrities having like things about drugs and alcohol is watching them deal with it. And it's
right.
going to be very interesting what he says here. Look, I'm
He
assuming there was
hasn't
some
made a statement
testing.
yet. It's interesting. He hasn't come out yet.
Not, a little bit. His attorney did, and and basically, and it's kind of the pat. Well, look, I had one drink, I had this, I had that, right? But I do find it interesting, and and I was doing a little bit of a deep. I'm gonna be admit I'm not really a Justin Timberlake fan. I don't follow every word, but he does have influence over people, right? And this is the interesting thing is like, last week we talked a little bit after the show about how, like, do you mention certain 12-step groups by name? You have to obviously quote them if you're taking them from literature, right?
Right.
And stuff like that about this risk of coming out and saying that you're in recovery or saying that you have a problem, especially if
Hmm.
you're a celebrity, could really be problematic
Yeah.
because the stakes are so high and you also have younger people looking at you as a role model. You're
Right.
attached to charities, you all this stuff that's going on, it's tough, which lends into, the more resources you have, sometimes the tougher it is to get sober if that's what you want to do.
Hmm. And then, when you have struggles in your life, people automatically assume, oh, they're drinking again, or so and so's marriage is bust up. This is, another thing recent from the headlines, someone who was open about their struggles with alcohol and rumors flying in the newspapers. Oh, it's because he's drinking again. And, and that's not fair either, because we are all as a society then putting judgment on
Yeah.
them. And how do they then turn around? They don't want maybe they don't want to come out and defend themselves, say I'm not drinking. They don't know us an answer at all. This is a personal journey and a personal struggle. So I feel like I said, I feel tremendous compassion for them, and I hope they get the help they need. And there are so many um, different paths to recovery now, but there are also a lot of treatment centers that can provide the help that they need, because some are focused on deep trauma. And we're hearing that a lot in the headlines as well, that people have suffered trauma in the um in the acting field and in
Yeah.
Hollywood. And so I just hope that everybody gets that they can get the help they need. They have the resources for it. What breaks my heart, Damon, is that when I have a client who doesn't have the financial resources and they really want to go to treatment,
Yeah.
and that I find is difficult for me. There are some barriers to entry, but I'm working with a lot of different rehabs, um, rehabilitation centers and treatment centers that um, do really work with the clients, and I'm grateful for that.
I know, like me, if you've been sober for any period of time and you're around people who are not alcoholics or don't really have a lot of experience, maybe you're the only one in their life that knows that they're sober, or
Right.
very few people, and they haven't
Yeah.
really had alcoholism or drug addiction in their family at all. A lot of times they'll ask, well, hey, what does this mean if they have a DUI? Does it mean that they're an alcoholic? I'm going to say not necessarily,
No.
I mean, I know a lot of people who have been court mandated into 12-step programs. And they went in and, they were maybe problem drinkers. They definitely made bad decisions, definitely made bad, like they should not have gotten behind the wheel when they drank, but it
Right.
doesn't necessarily make them an alcoholic. And I think
No.
this is the thing that I think is confusing for a lot of people, especially if they have people in their life that they're trying to get help. There are a lot of people that I know that were alcoholic on a really big scale, on
Hmm.
hospitalizations that would never get in a car, would never get in a car, right? Like, it's not a
Oh,
fait
it's definitely
accompli if
not a
somebody gets
defining.
busted. No.
No, no, I completely agree. People can, for whatever reason, make a bad judgment call, get behind, blow over, get a DWI. It does not say, oh, that person's an alcoholic. It says they made a really bad choice that night and they could have killed themselves or others. And thank God they were, stopped. But it does not indicator. We've talked about this before, Damon. It's not about the alcohol. It's about the relationship with alcohol and the power alcohol has. It's not how much you drink or when you drink or who you drink with or how you drink. It's what alcohol does when it enters your body. Are you able to predict the outcome? Does alcohol take over then, or do you have control over it without even thinking? So there's a lot that goes into saying I am really an addict or I'm an alcoholic or I suffer from alcohol use disorder. And we've talked about the continuum too of alcohol use disorder. So I
Yes.
yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
you that getting a DWI now, uh, we were going to talk a bit. We only have a few minutes left, but a bit about Matthew Perry coming into the headlines again. I mean, God bless him. May he rest in peace. May his memory be a blessing. And I think it's difficult. It's got to be difficult for his friends and family to have this coming back in when they say, well, you know what? No, it's not it wasn't the prescribed ketamine that he had, which,
Yeah.
people understood that. So that's got to be
Well, this
difficult
is the
for,
whole other side of it. This is
yeah.
somebody who's come out, said that they had struggles with drugs and alcohol, said that they had trauma related issues, was seeking help. And there was a bouncing of in and out for years. It's documented by that person, right? In books and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
So we're just saying what we actually saw and heard from the people involved in
Oh
it.
yeah, this is all published. I'm not.
But I will tell you, this thing about Matthew Perry, I have um I have mixed feelings about this. And I'm just gonna out myself on this. My family is a very big Matthew Perry fan. I'm not a huge fan of Friends. I watch Friends. It's not something that I would necessarily seek out. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Matthew Perry fan, right? A fanboy of Matthew Perry.
I don't think
Not
you're a
opposed
fan
to
of
him.
anyone but Damon. Damon,
No, that's not true. I'm a fan of a lot of people. Uh,
I'm
but
kidding.
no, I'm not. It's just the thing is with the Matthew Perry thing is that I find really interesting is this whole focus on ketamine and the rush now for everyone to take ketamine was right before this. And if you remember, I think we even did an episode on this. I know I did, maybe not with you, but I did several episodes of the Recovered Life show and I said, hey, this rush to go to ketamine, this is not for everyone. This is
No,
not a cure for alcoholism, in
no.
my opinion. This is not a cure for drug addiction. It has been used for trauma and it works with certain types of people from what I read and my
Right.
experience of talking with people who've done it, but it's not for the average Joe, in my opinion. And now it's like the new thing, like Ozempic was the
Right.
new
The new
addiction
thing.
thing. If you
Well,
take Ozempic, you're no
ketamine,
longer an alcoholic.
as we know, is a horse tranquilizer. So
Yeah.
that's where it got its start in life. And then we use it in anesthetic, right? Doctors can use it in anesthetic and for pain relief. Um, but I agree that they're jumping to it. It is really for hard cases, treatment resistant depression, people who've done
Yeah.
ECT, electrotherapy. Not It's not called shock therapy anymore, but it's called ECT, who have tried every drug on the market, who have been in therapy. And really, it goes hand in hand with therapy. It's called ketamine assisted therapy, CAT, and it needs to be done like that. So to have some organization on the internet where you can go and do some telehealth sessions and then get ketamine delivered to you, I mean, that is dangerous. So
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's
And I
what
don't know
happened. That's
what
what they're talking
happened.
about in this article,
Yeah.
is that it's possible that
Well, it's addictive. And see, this is the thing, Shauna, and why I wanted to, I texted you this Matthew Perry thing before, and this is what I think most people don't understand is that they think that if a doctor prescribes it, all of a sudden they're not going to have the effects of alcoholism or drug addiction. And that's not true. Okay, like I can tell you, like the 50-year-old white guy, oh, my back hurts. Oh, I've thrown out my back. I can't stand the pain anymore. All of a sudden they're on some sort of medication for their back. The next thing you know, right? They've relapsed and it's 2 or 3 years later. I can't tell you how many people
yes.
that I know that fall under that category. Not that you shouldn't take medication, not that you should, right? But it's different for people who we react differently to things. So even though
Mm-hmm.
you weren't necessarily a ketamine addict, does not mean if you have an addiction issue and you're in recovery, does not mean that if you take ketamine, that you're not going to find it addictive. And clearly, and I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm just saying as my opinion, this seems like a drug seeking activity
Mm-hmm.
if you're ordering it on the internet. And I don't know if he did, but I know people who have situations like you're saying, you're ordering it. And that's not like, well, where did he get that? Did he get that into ketamine therapy? And then he became addicted and he wasn't really monitored, right? Like, so I think for me, I think it's a break the glass situation. Like we've tried everything and that mental illness is so off the hook that we're making no progress.
Yeah.
But I really think you have to be supervised in a very big way,
Oh,
especially
it
if
has
you're in
to be hand in
recovery.
hand with your
Yeah.
doctor. It doesn't just work like that, like, oh, you're better and you're fixed. You have to have the associated or the therapy to go along with it to change your other behaviors. I mean, it is an intense protocol. I think it should be used in, as you said, very, very few cases and under strict supervision. And I think we've gone to the other end now. It might be a little too, not might be, I think it's too widely available and too quickly sought out.
Yeah. It
But
reminds
that's
me.
we get to do our podcast and give our opinions. We're not doctors. We don't know
Yeah.
anything. We're
I don't
just giving
know.
opinions here. Well, I'm
Now,
not
on the
saying we
flip
don't know
side, I will
anything, but
tell you,
we're not doctors.
I've had people in my group that have worked with people in my immediately recovery group of my posse who have had really deep psychological trauma. They had
Mm-hmm.
really bad trauma. They
Yep.
had done everything for years, constantly unhappy, not necessarily relapsing, but have done this. And it
Oh
has
yeah.
made a huge change in their life. Plus, totally qualified for it under a doctor's supervision, had people in their life that was also watching them if they
Mm-hmm.
had cravings, that they had a support group. But, just taking it alone in your jacuzzi just is like, if anybody's listening to this, it's like, if you are in recovery and you are an addict, in my opinion, you're more susceptible, even if that was not your drug of choice, to get sucked in to this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I know someone whose life it changed, so I'm a big proponent of it in the right setting, because this person was probably not going to make it, and the ketamine changed their entire life. 30 years of depression, of treatment
Yeah.
resistant
Yeah.
depression, and they can live a great life. So I do agree, but yeah, I don't know. It brings up the shame again, right? The shame, even posthumously here, he's being talked about, and let's let him rest in peace. And I understand
Yeah.
if the good that comes out of this, though, Damon, is that it was mail order and they crack down on that, then so be it. And that's fantastic.
Well, I will tell you that this is an epidemic in Los Angeles. I know somebody who I had a a kind of a business relationship with or knew, whose kid got mail order drugs, died, teen. This is a very, very big thing, and it's very sad. One of the things I wanted to say in closing here, last week and the last couple of weeks, we've been talking a little bit about 12-step groups, and we've had this inner debate with the Recovered Life show since I started it. Do I mention the actual 12-step group? Do I not? And I do, when we're talking a quote directly from something, because I feel
right from the
that,
literature, a direct
I
quote
don't want
from
to
the literature.
plagiarize
It's a
that.
book. It's got an ISBN number. Yep.
Exactly. I want to actually quote it from the book. But here's this thing about celebrities and recovery. We're talking about Justin Timberlake. We're talking about Matthew Perry. This is really good. And I think there was a 60 Minutes interview with, was it the lead singer of Aerosmith, came out and did a whole thing and talked about his direct experience with 12-step group, named it, the whole thing. And there was a lot of controversy about that. It was the traditions of this group, and they say don't do it. And it is pretty clear in there not to mention it. They don't really get into why. They do a little bit why. What's your thoughts? Pro, con? There's been a lot of people that have talked in 12-step groups that they want to change this, because it's not like in Dharma recovery, I believe, or Smart recovery. They don't have that by law, I believe. And that's why I'm mentioning those by name, because I don't think that there's an issue with that. What's your thoughts with this, Shauna? Because
okay,
this
in
is super
closing, because
controversial.
we said we only had 20 minutes. So in closing, my thoughts of this are, I don't think 50 years ago or whenever the book was written, they could have anticipated what it looks like today with social media, with the reach that we do have, also with the treatment availability that we do have. We have about the same number of members as we had 25 or 30 years ago. And maybe it's because we haven't talked enough about the people who have gotten and stayed sober through a 12-step program specifically and how they did it. Maybe we could be reaching more people if we were able to speak. But I don't have an opinion on it. That's the best part of AA. If they want to change something, everybody in the world in AA gets to talk about it, vote on it.
Yeah.
And, I would fully admit, like, I am in a 12-step program. I use AA, and if I relapsed, I would also own the fact that I stopped doing my program. It wasn't the program that failed me. I failed the program.
And that is the big thing, is that I think the AA in general did not want people coming out and saying, oh, I'm a Matthew Perry fan. Oh, he was involved. And I don't know if he was, but
no, I don't know if he was. He never mentioned it.
And so guess what? It doesn't work, right? Because it didn't work for him, which does not mean that just because somebody relapses does not mean that it didn't work. I want to throw that out, but we'll get onto this in future Recovery This Week episodes, because it is an interesting topic. And guys, I'd love your comments down below as well. And if you're not a Recovered Life Plus member, please think about joining, helping support Recovered Life in these conversations that we're having. We want to reach as many people as we can. So if you're on Substack, social media, restack them, share them, do whatever you can to help spread this Recovered Life message. Shauna, McKenna, Vick, final words from Austin. I hope you're having some good barbecue.
Oh, I hope to have some good barbecue too. I think we have a couple dinners out, so I'll make sure I get some brisket. Final words, stay sober, don't drink, go to meetings, work with a sponsor, call out, reach out if you have help. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. And I want to always end on that we are open to helping anyone who needs help. Even if you just have questions or you're confused, reach out to us.
It absolutely makes our day. Guys, everybody go out and have your best recovered life, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, if you like this episode, think about supporting us by becoming a Recovered Life Plus member. At Recovered Life TV, we're not just delivering premium recovery resources, we're empowering you with the knowledge and tools that make a real difference in the quality of your recovery. By subscribing, you gain access to ad-free content, expert insights, exclusive video and audio segments, special projects, plus so much more, all while supporting our mission to spread the recovery message far and wide. Whether you're seeking to deepen your understanding or stay updated on the latest addiction and mental health recovery trends, Recovered Life Plus is for you. Subscribe now and start living your best recovered life. Just go to recoveredlife.tv and become a Plus member today.